So, overview. In this chapter, we've done factoring as a way to solve equations. We've done completing the square as a way to solve equations. We've also done square root, but that only works for like one style problem, basically. And then this is going to be the last method you learn. So it's called the quadratic formula. And it's got advantages and disadvantages. Most students prefer this as a main way to solve every equation, though. So if you are a person that didn't like factoring, didn't like three-term hard factoring, didn't like factoring by grouping, which was part of three-term hard, didn't like difference of squares, which was 1 plus 1 minus. If you didn't like completing the square, which is generally universal, most people don't like that one, even though it's kind of fun to use, but not for doing it a lot. Quadratic formula is going to be, where's my mouse? There it is. Quadratic formula is going to be the method that will work for all quadratic equations. So we'll start with this. For the quadratic formula to work, it has to be in standard form. It cannot be in vertex form. It can't be written any other way. Quadratic formula only works if you can figure out what A, B, and C are. And the only way that works is if it's standard form. That was definitely a mistake I noticed on the test for quite a few people, where a lot of people were trying to figure out A, B, and C when it wasn't even written like this. And you can't. A, B, and C only work if your equation is written like this. I forgot to look at it. Okay, so you should probably have a lot of this written down by now, I'm guessing, or not. So you're going to want to learn the quadratic formula. Oh, do you need a pencil? Here you go. Yep.
Can you play that song?
I will not.
Oh.
Pencil. Okay. Push the button on the grip.
If I requested it, if that it would be helpful to me as a student for my learning, would you play it?
No.
No?
There's nothing preventing you from playing it on your own.
What
I
song
just feel like
though?
it'd be so special if you played it for the class. It's a good memory for me. I mean,
I can't because I'm recording.
Oh.
I don't know, I guess that wouldn't be copyrighted. I don't know.
What song is it though?
Quadratic formula.
Oh.
So you learn the quadratic formula to Pop Goes the Weasel. Yeah, it's there. Number one reason I will not play it or sing it is it'll get stuck in your head, and it's so horrible.
but if it's stuck in our head, doesn't that help us memorize it?
Sure, go for it. I have nothing stopping you from playing it on your own.
I'd love it if you sang it for us.
Yeah,
Still a no.
I would also like that.
Oh, I'm sure you guys would love it. Okay, so negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That was me singing in like 18 time. It was real fast. My voice is golden. Now, this is the only part I want you to take out of this. The whole purpose of the quadratic formula is to find the solutions of a quadratic equation. So this will take place of factoring, completing square rooting. This is just a different method to find the answers. The nice thing about this one is it works for every single equation there is. It doesn't matter if there's 2 terms, 3 terms, doesn't matter if there's a number on the x squared. It works for all of them. So that's why most students like it. It's not that it's quick to use. I mean, like, there's a lot of parts in it. But it's not horrible either. Can I change the slide? All right. Well, I do have them saved. Okay, so we're going to do one together. So we're going to find the zeros of this function. Trying to think who hasn't been rolled forever.
I haven't rolled yet, Carol.
We're going to run out of time. That's why I was just calling on somebody. Munir? I don't think you've gotten rolled on for a little while. Okay, do you remember what I'm supposed to do to find the zeros? It can't say f of x equals. If I'm trying to find the solutions, what do I have to do? Excellent, excellent. Thank you.
Can you go on my test? Just do it tomorrow.
Well, yeah, we only got 15 minutes left. But correct, so you need to make it equal to 0. Now, we have a quadratic equation that's equal to 0, and we could try to solve it by a bunch of different ways. We are purposely using quadratic formula. Alex? Do you remember how to find A, B, and C? Because that's kind of critical for this.
A, B, and C.
Yes.
A is equals to x, 1.
Okay, good. So A is 1 because it's the number on the x squared, and right, there isn't one. Okay, how about B?
It's 10,
10, good.
and C is 2.
Good. So not a trick question, but let's say one of the terms is missing. What number would you put in place of the missing term?
0.
Yep. Yep. So if there is a term missing, you put a 0. If there's no x, B is 0. If there's no plain number, C is 0. If there is no x squared term, you wouldn't use this quadratic formula, so you won't have an x squared missing. Yeah.
If there's a number in front of the x squared, is it that number or
Yes.
is it still 1?
Correct. When there's no number written, that means one of it. Yep. Okay, so here we've got the numbers, and the quadratic formula kind of relies on those. So I'm going to write down the generic one first. Negative b plus and minus square root b, oh, that's a bad line, b squared minus 4ac. All over 2a. Oh, it's so hard to write a line on this little tablet. Okay, I'm guessing you guys are semi-used to negative b, because I don't know if you'll recognize it or not. This is where the axis of symmetry formula came from. This is an expanded version of the axis of symmetry formula. How do we do negative b again? What happens if b is negative?
Then it would be positive.
Yeah, negative b means the opposite of b. So if you need to write little notes to yourself, write an arrow pointing to negative b and write the opposite of b. So I'm just going to put the number in. We've got negative 10, plus and minus. Now, if you're interested, by the way, like what a lot of students will eventually ask is like, how do people come up with these formulas? Like, how did somebody just like know to write this information down to find answers? And what somebody did was they took this equation with no numbers, and they completed the square on this equation with no numbers. And the answer you get when you complete the square on this one is the quadratic formula. I'm not expecting you guys to do it or have to do it. I figured I would just kind of let you know where it came from. Okay, so now I've got square root. B squared would be 10 squared. I'm going to put it in parentheses because if it's a negative number, then I'll remember to get rid of the negative. Minus 4 times A times C. Now these are all positive numbers, so it's going to be easy. Negatives are where most students make the mistakes. And then double A, so it'd be 2 times 1. David?
Will we be allowed to have a scientific calculator on this test? For like solving these quadratic formulas? Will we get to have a calculator?
I'm guessing you will.
Okay.
And I'll make sure you know it ahead of time so that you would be able to bring one.
Okay.
I didn't on the last test only because it would have been the day of, and I know that most students would have, not brought one from home or not had time to grab from a friend.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so David, how would we simplify this? How would you do it? Because we had a lot of stuff to do.
Whatever's in the square root first.
Nice, good call. So you kind of just pick an area and work with it. So this negative 10, the 2 times 1, you could do them later. So we're going to work with the square root first. So I'm going to rewrite stuff, but you don't have to. Okay, do you think you can help me start that a little bit? Or do you want somebody else to do it? You want somebody else? Okay, pick that other person. If you want somebody else to do it, you have to pick that person. I don't either. All right, David, then tell me how to simplify. Wow, you really didn't want to pick somebody else. Okay,
Don't you do 10 squared first?
that's exactly what I would do first.
You minus it from, and then you do 4 times 1 times 2.
Excellent. See, it wasn't that bad. It pays. Look at that. You didn't want to call somebody else so bad that you just did it, and then you did it perfect. So you're starting to see why these problems are annoying because they take up a lot of space, a lot of lines. It's not that they're horrible, they're just a lot of things. Okay, and then I've got negative 10 plus and minus 100 minus 8. Okay, square root of 92. 4 goes into that. I don't know how many times. 4 goes in 23 times. 4 times 23. Oh, well, 23 is prime, so I guess that's it. So I'm going to simplify square root of 92. And I'll write it out for you guys, but if you want to do things in your head, that's fine too. So I'm going to have negative 10 plus and minus 92. I'm going to break up into 4 and 23. Because 4 is the only perfect square number that goes into it. Okay. Negative 10 plus and minus 2 root 23 over 2. It's a lot of 2's. We're just about done. Oh man, we got to extend the page. Does anybody want me to scroll back up? Was I going too fast on those steps
Yeah,
at all?
I just need it for like 2 seconds.
That's fine. I kind of get into the problem sometimes, and so I kind of get moving. And it's hard for me to remember at times that you guys are trying to learn it. So, does somebody want me to answer anything on what's up there? Like, are you okay why I wrote it as 4 times 23? Like why I picked a 4? All right? No, I'm not quite done. Normally it would be. There's only one thing we actually can do left. I don't know if anybody sees it or not. Anybody have an educated guess? Yeah.
Divide negative 10 by 2.
You will end up being right, but I think you mean it slightly off. So the trick here is that if we're dividing by 2, we have to divide everything by 2. Like this 2 is applied on the 10 and the right-hand side, the left and the right. And if I can divide them all by 2, I will. And on this one, we can. So the negative 10 divided by the 2 is negative 5. Plus and minus, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So this becomes 1 square root 23. It's like the 2's cancel out. And this is the same answer we would have gotten by completing the square. Now, the good thing about this one is there's no steps to memorize. The only thing you have to know is the formula.
Wouldn't 23 still be divided by 2?
No. So 2 root 23 is one term. This is probably a bad example, but I'll go with it. So say you have 8 divided by 2. I could write it as 2 times 4 over 2. And the 2's would cancel, but you don't divide the 4 by 2 as well. So multiplication kind of means they're one thing. So that's how this same situation over here works.
Okay.
That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will we be provided with the quadratic formula on the test, or should we?
Undecided.
Okay.
My guess is by the time you get there, you'll remember it. Because once you use it enough, it doesn't ever change. So you end up just kind of memorizing it naturally without trying to.
Yeah.
That's what's happened in most years when I've given this, is we end up using it enough that most everybody just remembers it. So
We use it on the retake?
no, good question though. So what you can do on the retake is you can use it to check your answers, I guess. If you really wanted to, it would just take a lot of time. Do you guys think you could try this one on your own? See if you can find the answer. I'll write the quadratic formula down for you. I'm sure you don't have it memorized yet. That was a squared. It's written really badly, but that's squared. Nothing. I take it I wrote zeros on the last one? Roots, zeros, and solutions are all the same thing. They usually just change the word depending on the style problem you're doing.
Are we going to get an imaginary number in this one?
You can. I have no idea. I pretty much just made up these problems. So that's the good thing about the quadratic formula is it works for any kind of problem no matter what. So imaginary numbers are definitely possible. Time do we get done? 21? Yes, we'll start now. Tracy, what'd you get for A, B, and C? Because these are kind of critical to be able to start the problem. A is the number on the x squared. So 2. So just the number. -1? Okay, good. So these are the numbers we're going to use for the quadratic formula. So I'm going to have the opposite of b, which would make it +1. Plus and minus. B squared minus 4a, yeah, this will be imaginary, c. All over 2 times a. So I know this is going to be imaginary because this answer should be negative. It's going to be negative. So I'm going to simplify the square root first because that's generally what most people like to do. Then it feels less confusing. So negative 1 squared is positive 1 minus 4 times 2, 8 times 2, 16. 2 times 2 is 4. And then we have 1 plus or minus square root of negative 15 over 4. And actually, this one doesn't really have any simplifying to do, especially because of this 1. And then 15 doesn't have any numbers that break down into it. The only thing you can do is because it's a square root of a negative, it's going to be imaginary. So you can either write I root 15 or root 15I. It's kind of your preference. I like writing the I at the end, so I usually do that.
Where did the divided by 4 go?
Still there.
Oh,
I probably just didn't say it out loud. Maybe that's what you were going by?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, JP.
Square root of negative 15 divided by 4 isn't the right answer. You have to put the I in there.
It's kind of iffy. So it's traditionally pretty normal to, if you have a square root of a negative, to identify it as imaginary. That's kind of what you're asking?
Yeah.
It's not like it's wrong, it's just not right. I mean, it's kind of a gray area.
Will it be wrong on the test?
Definitely. So on this test for sure, the goal would be for you to be able to identify imaginary numbers.